Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Good morning, welcome to the Line by Line Bible Studies. And we are continuing the Psalm 31. Let's get down there. Alright, well, that's too far. Alright, so we're on verse 6 where he says, I have hated them that regard lying vanities. But I trust the Lord. In the first several verses, Lord, I put my trust in you. Let me never be ashamed. Deliver me in thy righteousness. Bow down thy ear to me. Deliver me speedily. Be thou my strong rock for an house of defense to save me. For thou art my rock and my fortress. Therefore, for thy name's sake, lead me and guide me. I put all my eggs in your basket, O Lord. So, help me. Help me, not just help me like my interests, but lead me and guide me in the way that you would have me walk. And pull me out of the net that they have laid privily for me, for thou art my strength. There are a lot of secret traps the enemy will spring for you. That if it were not for the Lord, you would surely put your foot in it. But thanks be to God, we have God's mercy and grace, and it is plentiful towards us. So that all the devices of the enemy are useless against us, ultimately. Ultimately, the Pharisees of Jesus' day surely thought they got one on him. We got him crucified just like we were hoping. But it all backfired in the end, doesn't it? It's not, the outcome was not such as they had hoped. They still lost Jerusalem, and the name of Jesus was spread abroad, and his teachings infected not only many Jews, but the Gentiles also. They didn't want to get back to Caesar. But eventually, Paul would make his appeal to Caesar. Not that it changed anything from Caesar's perspective, but that's what they feared. And the things they feared most were the things that were least endangering them. Their own hypocrisy was a greater threat. Because it removed, because if we separate ourselves from God, in our doings, we become so consumed with the earthly vanities. I have hated them that regard lying vanities. This term, lying vanities, I associate it in my studies with idolatry. And that's usually what they're, as far as, it doesn't specify, but there is no, what is a lying vanity? Oh, wrong thing. Okay, let's see here. I was going to bring up the, I just wanted to look at the Hebrew a little there. See if we can orchestrate a perfect transition here. That works fine. Now why don't I just Oh, wrong button. Yeah, that always does that flash. Also, verse 6. Lying vanities. Interesting. The word lying. Yeah, I'll show you. Lying and then vanities. So lying. Yeah. So lying is shav. And that's a word that comes up very often. It means emptiness, vanity. From an unused word, from a word that's not used in the Bible. And it's translated in many different ways, as you can see. From the same as show, in the sense of desolating, evil, as destructive, literally ruin, or morally guile, figuratively idolatry, as false. It says in this verse, vanity, I know it's used elsewhere. Idols are referred to as shav. They're empty. They're not just empty. It's a funny thing that something could be nothing, and that nothing could be destructive. You know what I mean? That's an idol. It has no actual substance. You know what I mean? It is a representation of an idea that has no, well, it has some basis in reality, but it has no reality of its own. You know what I mean? It reminds me of the way that modern people will talk about God. Yeah, I did one study on Jordan Peterson, the way he talked about the New Testament God being wrong. But you'll see a lot of these on the internet, the intellectual dark web types, as they call themselves, and it's one of the most cringe-inducing titles I've ever heard, is for my money. You know, when you start calling yourself some weird stuff like that, you maybe ought to think, just how great do I think I am? But they have this terminology for that. But a lot of them, when they talk about God and religion, God is not a person for them. God is this human conceptualization of the ultimate being, and or some kind of ultimate being. It is not real. It has no basis in its own reality. It is a conceptualization we have extracted from our experiences, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I don't know exactly how but many intellectual types who will pay respect to religion as an important human institution these days. You know what I mean? There are intellectuals who have come along since the past century and said, you know what, disavowing religion and embracing atheism and all that maybe was not the best thing for society. And these are intellectuals who are questioning, the wholesale abandoning of religion and whether or not that's good for society. And their view is very often that God is this sort of extraction of human experience. Not that in God, in our understanding of God, there isn't an extraction of the combined experiences of the men who make up the inspired authors. I mean, because it's an interesting thing that the Bible is written by so many people. I liked what Jordan Peterson said. It's like it's written by nobody but by everybody. Meaning, there's a whole lot of human experience encapsulated in the scriptures. A lot. But to say that it is merely that is not right, because God is a living God, and those of us who have sought Him, you who have encountered Him, His reality is greater than that. That He's not merely an encapsulation of ideas or anything like that. But idols are ultimately nothing. Hold on. Hey, Bell. Vanities. See, lying is not really the best translation of shav. And they translate lying. It's vanity. I like vanity better because the emptiness. I don't know. It's hard to tell what the Hebrew author intended, since the word has a variety of meanings. It could be assigned. This is heba, which is vapor or breath for vanity. And interesting, when we talk about the breath of life, that's ruach, the Hebrew, but here it is habal, from habal, emptiness. Strong says, let's see how it's translated here. Often used as an adverb. Translate altogether, vain vanity. Well, figuratively, because of breath being, it's saying, so it's like the wind. It's almost like both these words have an expression of vanity, don't they? Like they are vain vanities. Empty things of no value, which have the tendency for people to put their trust in them, the way they do for idolatry. All right, so let's take those thoughts and apply them to what it's saying. I said, why is an idol a lying vanity? Well, because the scriptures will talk about them and say, like, they have eyes but they do not see, they have ears but they do not hear. They have no actual power. There's no real thing there, but there is like a promise of it. Like when people, and it's easy to pick on people's superstition, right? You could say, like, some people have those Saint whoever statues, right? I can't remember which one, but they'll have a little statue of a saint, right? And the guy's looking over them in their mind, Maybe it's, for some reason I know there's some saint that, like, taxi drivers like. I don't remember which one, right? But he's standing on their dashboard, looking over their taxi driving thing. That's the idea that they have. Honestly, the kind of overt idol that we think of, now that's a big deal in the Old Testament. But nowadays, people don't put the same stock in them. They don't take up the same religious space. I don't, I could sit up here and just condemn, Catholic interest in images and all that, and that's fine. But I'm always more interested in the ways it might be impacting me. What idols do I have set up in my heart, if any, that I should be paying attention to? Because, while it is gratifying to see others sin, recognize it, and then say, look at them sin, how terrible, It's always gratifying in a certain sense to be able to look at the wicked, condemn their activity, with many words. I can feel like there's scriptures I can read where the Lord is enraged at the wicked, and it's satisfying to hear it said. And to hear the words like God's anger burns like a fire and the wicked shall be devoured, we derive a certain degree of satisfaction in seeing God destroy the wicked. But I also know that, that could easily be me. So I try not to get too satisfied, knowing that, but for the grace of God, there go I, Some people regard lying vanities, right? Not just the old idolatry or the blatant outward. You're having something that's actually nothing, like a little statue of a man that supposedly you talk to or pray to, and it fulfills, or the God that it represents. I mean, because it's interesting in the scriptures, they talk about idols as if the people who worship idols don't know that they're just stone statues. As if the stone statue itself has power. But I don't know that that's false. You know what I mean? Like, I do think that many idolaters would look at the stone statue and say, well, it's a representation of my God. You know, it's just a representation. But also, very often, with those physical representations comes a certain superstitious belief about the representation itself. The stone itself becomes sacred. You know? I mean, I remember like being given a cross with Jesus on it. My dad had a tendency of he had a cross with Jesus on it in the house that I remember eventually he took Jesus off of it because it was like a Catholic thing. And he just felt like it was like somehow the Jesus on the cross was like the representation of him like that somehow didn't set with him right. And some people are like that, like they don't like the Catholic style crucifix necklace ornament that has a little Jesus on it. I remember this also impacted me at some point because I remember taking Jesus off of a little ornamental cross I had at the time. I had several because growing up being Catholic, you get these things as gifts. Or growing up with a Catholic family, I mean, we weren't very strongly Catholic, as I've talked about many times. But we did go to Catholic church, and there was a certain cultural attachment to that. Like I said, we got, I'd have given to me crosses with Jesus on it. I remember taking them off. Because it was, not because it was idolatry, but because it was something uncomfortably close to it. I mean, nobody thought, and here's the thing. When I did that, I remember, like, what do I do with the little Jesus now? I felt a little superstitious about it. Just toss it in the garbage. It seemed like shouldn't do that. Even though I know that the man herein portrayed is not the Lord. It is a representation of the Lord, even if it's some, stand-in guy's face, body, whatever. Even though it's an artistic representation. I mean, at least, it's interesting to me that some people do like smash stained glass windows at churches, and they're religious people. They're not just like anarchists who hate religion. They will knock out stained glass because they just don't like it. And I appreciate the beauty of all the religious art. I don't have a problem with any of it. Well, with any of at least the fact that anything to do with God, like Michelangelo's, a lot of those beautiful old paintings and the Sistine Chapel and all that kind of stuff. Interesting art. I don't feel any need to like go paint over it or do anything weird. Destroy these things. But the real vanity, the real idols set up in our hearts are things that are, I want to go into like, how does idolatry really affect us today? How are the ways that, because when Jesus would talk about murder, he talks about, well, hey, don't be angry with your brother. Angry? Yeah, because that's like the root of murder is anger. So be careful about how you're angry, because it can be sinful in and of itself. It can be sinful in and of itself, the anger itself. So also, idolatry in its most literal form is there's a little image, right? A little image of a god, as this battery will represent, and a man then bows down and worships it. Worships before this little image. That is overt idolatry. But there has to be, just like you don't just get to murder, you go from hatred anger and all that stuff to murder. So also idolatry has precursors, or idolatry light. There's like a light version of idolatry that I also have to watch out for. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just about the image. You know, I mean, I've thought about like what the scripture says about images and idols, and it caused me to question all kinds of things. Like, is it even okay to watch movies? Is it okay to watch television? You know, I mean, these are thoughts I went through, and the funny thing is, a lot of it is like I didn't know the technical justification. I just took the liberty based on we have liberty in Christ. But it gets confusing if you think about it, because it's like all the injunctions against images. But we live in an image-driven culture. I mean, so did the people in the old world. I mean, they had images drawn all over everything. You know, when they dug up Pompeii, they discovered the walls were covered with graffiti and drawings. A lot of them, you know, dirty and stuff. You know, on public buildings. You know, a lot of it like dirty, meaning the word. You know, like typical graffiti. It's typical from when I was a kid. I don't know. A lot of times I see graffiti and I don't understand what it means. You know, it's like the words don't make sense. I can't read it. I don't sit down and take time to figure it out either. So maybe I should. So I could increase my understanding, which is always a benefit. There are lying vanities that promise. The idea of lying, the vain thing of an idol. An idol promises something. You know? Just like God. You know, God says, I will be to you a God, and you shall be to me a people. Right? And I will make of you a nation. I will make of you your children as the stars of heaven and the sands of the sea. Abraham. Right? There's promises. Idols also have promises. Like, oh, look, it's the fertility goddess. I will give you a baby. Just worship me. And that's the sort of promise of the idol. I will. You know, and there's all kinds of idols in modern human life that say, hey, I'll give you what you want. Or, you know, I'll bring you true happiness. You know, there's a promise. But the thing itself is empty. It has no substance. You know, it's we chase it only to find we are chasing the wind, chasing emptiness, chasing vanity, chasing breath. You know? I think it's interesting. Breath is such an interesting concept because, like, the idea of the soul and the spirit is of a breath of life, and God breathes into man's nostrils the breath of life, and he becomes a living soul. Yet it is also an analogy for nothing, wind, nothing. You know, when things are, you know, it's made of breath, and it's the cheapest thing in the world. It's funny. It's an interesting thing that breath is so critical. It is life itself, yet it is also nothing because it is cheap and empty and of no actual consequence. Because my existence is only consequential to in a very small scale to some humans. You know, if I die tomorrow, it's going to affect some people a lot, but just a few. You know, the world will go on. The world won't even skip a single heartbeat on my behalf. No. I'm not important, right? And that's not just like humble to get you, oh, you're important. It's just like, I just mean to the world. It assigns no importance, right? But they assign importance to all kinds of things that are vain. This is important. Oh, this is so important. But rather than lying, I prefer empty here. Empty vanities. Lying is an interesting choice, though. We saw what shav was like as a word. If it was explicitly lying, that would be actually good, like an explicit idea of a lie. But it is a lie as empty, as false. You know what I mean? As something that can't be relied upon. But obviously that by implication promises, oh, you can rely on me. And so what can we use for examples? I've been avoiding that because like I don't have I don't have a clear nothing has jumped into my mind. Because it's like they're so subtle, and you know what I mean, like I don't have idols. You know what I mean? I don't have idols. So what would the precursor of that be? Like trusting in things that are not God. Putting my hope in things that are not God. Putting my having fear towards things that are not God. Right? But I regard them. I should not regard these fearful things. I should not regard these things in life that exalt themselves into the place that only should be occupied by God and his fear. You know what I mean? Like, I should fear God. I should not fear this thing in life, you know, like, I'm having trouble putting something in there because I'm like, how does that jive with the idea of idolatry? You know, like my bank. What's my bank going to do? But I don't, you know, is it an idol? It definitely feels like it's an interesting thing because it's like, you know, we have the idea of corporations. They're entities, right? They're entities. When you make a business, it becomes an entity in and of itself. A corporation is, in legal terms, a person, like somehow. Well, it's regarded as a person in legal terms. You know, an entity into itself. And it's an interesting thing because it is a non-corporeal, a being without a body that has a representation. We have images, corporate images. They're like people. You know what I mean? Like, so a bank, you know, we talk about the bank, but there is no the bank. There's just people working at the bank, but there also is the bank. You know what I mean? There also is the store, not just the place to store, but like, you know, Walmart, the business. You know what I mean? There's one here, there's one there, there's one everywhere. And there's an image of... Who's calling? Hello? Yes? Yes. Mall and... Yeah, I'm aware where your pipeline is. It's kind of away from my actual property because the property, the plot includes like all this acreage that was sold off separately from the house. Yeah, I mean, and I've walked down the road and I've seen the marker there. I don't think it actually runs under my house or anything. That's right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, that's great. Thanks for calling in. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. No problem. Bye bye. British Petroleum calling. I had to take the call. It's just because I'm going to be doing digging on my property, and I was suspecting I better take this call. And it's weird to take in the middle of a Bible study, but basically it was like, because there's a pipeline that runs under the property on which my property sits, or in which my property sits, like the original 40 acres or whatever. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they tell me some stuff that I don't think it matters. It doesn't matter. But I had to take the call. Sorry about that. BP called. Who's BP? British Petroleum. Where's that guy? No, it's an entity. I just think it's corporations are kind of like entities. I wonder if, like, I mean, like I said, the bank. Can it save me? I don't know. I don't know if I got a good example for that. Idolatry is a tough one in the modern era. You know what I mean? Because you could look at celebrity culture. You could look at other minor things. Like anything anything that seems to be doing God's business, like inspiring fear in me, might be idolatrous on some minor level. Not like I'm worshiping idols like in the old way, but that it is it is causing me to sin in a way that is akin to the sin of idolatry. And which, if it was merely superstition, would be, well, it's all sins and transgressions which men commit are forgivable. But certainly that's not the point. I mean, it's whether it is a sin or not. And sometimes it's hard to tell. I'm taking up a lot of time on this. As half the study's gone already. I haven't even really finished the verse. Oh well. He's saying, them that pay regard to things that are vain and empty and not God. I mean, when you think about it, let's just use an example of a modern day religion. Like right now, this in our world today, I've heard people talk about the rise of a new religion, which is this anti-racism thing. Where it's not enough that you just aren't a racist. It's like they have a whole system of, well, one, they've thrown out the old definition of racism, and it's a complicated issue. But, like, they've talked about it in terms of being like a new religion. They have an original sin, it's American slavery, and, all that. It's a form of, like, it's beliefs about race and this that sort of encapsulate in almost an unreasoning fervor. And what is the lie of that religion? Like the woke culture, as they call it, the cancel culture, as they call it. Well, what is there a promise? The promise is that you somehow can be redeemed. By adhering to this thing, you can somehow redeem your soul by, flagellating yourself and admitting your, you sort of admit your guilt. Meaning, like, you don't have to actually be racist anymore. You just have to have benefited from a system that has unequal results. Anyway, as I'm describing this, I'm like, this is not even interesting, because I want to talk about it in terms of religion. You know what I mean? What did they promise? What's the, what's your hope of redemption? I guess, pay heed to the movement and confess your sins, and then redeem yourself by being part of the movement. I don't know. I don't know what their redemption narrative is. There is something they're trying. Why? Because why do people get involved? Why do they march? Why do they hold signs? Why do they feel so strong? They're fighting against something they think is an important enemy. You know what I mean? I think there's this important enemy that needs to be attended to. All this hate and racism and etc. Okay. And I guess, I don't know. Because it's wrapped in I don't know. It's weird because it's like they call it a new religion, but it's like, what's the idol? I mean, it's like, what is it what is it they're seeing? I guess a world in which everything is equal. That's part of it. I think the part of it is this, is that, they say, well, there's injustice. And it's all racism. And racism is the blame. It's what's at the bottom of everything. The reason some people don't make less money than others, it's because this whole system is racism. And we have to eliminate the system, and then we eliminate the racism because we got rid of the system, and then hopefully something new will blossom, I guess is the promise, right? Tear down the old world, and the new one will spring out, and, and we don't have to plan it even. It's just going to happen. It's all going to be wonderful. It has this big, like, here's the thing. It's like the woke culture is this lying vanity that says, like, we can solve all society's problems, all the inequality. And it's funny because the inequality is a big thing that they have a problem with. Whereas the scriptures let you know, it's like inequality, there's nothing, inequality is just a fact. There's no, like, nothing wrong with it. Some people are given 5 talents, some given 2. But every man is expected to do what he's able to with what he is given. Like, so you have unequal results because you have unequal gifts. Not every man has the same, same work ethic, same talent structure. It's all different. So why would you expect, the thought that it could all come out equal? It's like they worship a God of equality. What it is they worship the God of justice. The injustice is the thing that they think is just so, but they have trouble recognizing what injustice is in their religion. The religion is going to supposedly solve injustice. And the lie is that it can. It's a lying vanity in that it promises something it can't deliver. They have a lot of beliefs about right and wrong, good and evil, justice and injustice. And they're talking about changing everything so that it can be fixed. But there's nothing they've proposed will fix anything. Anything. You will continue to have unequal outcomes. You just will, because people are not equally equipped. Someone with an IQ of 70 is not going to be able to accomplish the same things someone who has an IQ of 120 is going to be able to accomplish. It doesn't mean they can't be a worthy human being. But, like, you can't expect the outcomes to be the same. That's madness. But the promise that they could be is what tempts people. Everything can come out fairly. Everything can come out, let's say, quote unquote, fairly. Because no one has ever explained to me why it's fair that a man with an IQ of 70 who can only do what he can do should have the same results as someone with an IQ with 120. The fact that the person with an IQ of 120 didn't earn his IQ, doesn't seem to be reason enough to say, like, well, for that reason, we should never allow them to exceed too much, in life, that they should excel too much. We don't want to have too much success from people, because then other people will feel the envy of being in a lesser position. I don't know. But, like, idols in some way, because people pray to God. Think about how people pray to God. Like, God, I need help with my bill. Or God, I need help with, there's or St. Anthony, whatever. They pray to their saints and their gods. And what do they want? They want things, right? And in a sense, the lying vanity of the idol is that because it's like there's a promise, like, well, I can do things about money because I am the saint of money. Or I can do things about your safe travel because I'm the God of safe travel. And I can do something about systemic racism and the iniquity of systemic racism because I am the God of systemic racism. You know what I mean? Like that's like, I'm the God that represents justice, racial justice for all people. That's what I represent as the God. I'm the God of racial justice. It's a great idea. I like this idea. I'm the God of racial justice. And put your trust in me, because I represent justice for all races. Oh, wow, what a good God you are. You know, what would his name be? What would the God of racial justice be? I'm not going to say the thing that comes to my mind. I'm not going to say it, right? Because it's stupid. But like, you know what I mean? Like, it's, God of racial, you're going to bring about justice for all the races. What a great idea for God. Now, the lie is that because it is no God. Only God could do such a thing. Only God could bring about justice. Only God will bring about justice. Like ultimate justice. They put their trust in the promise of equity from nothing. You know, just from, we're upset about inequity, so we're going to have equity, darn it. One way or the other, because we complained. If we complain loud enough, you know, if we tell God, if we pray to St. Anthony enough, eventually we'll get what we want. No, that is purely just coincidence. I can pray all day and maybe something will happen. You know, oh Lord, let me go to sleep tonight. You know, eventually I'm going to go to sleep. Maybe not tonight. Maybe I won't get sleep tonight. But you know what I'm saying? It promises deliverance from sin. It promises. But like, what does their movement really have that can fix anything? All that it seems that I hear from the people who worship this new religion is basically everything that they want to do is going to make the racial tensions and problems worse. So their religion is ultimately a lying vanity. It's not going to help. You know, the dogmas they espouse do not bring about equality, equity, or peace between the races. They're only stoking the fires and fanning the flames of conflict. So, I guess so. Then when I think of that in terms of like a modern religion, like something that's actually spouting that people who are not religious are calling this religion because it's based on beliefs. It's not based on any sort of, it's not science. What is it? Then it's religion. They have sets of beliefs. They have a narrative about life, of culture. And it promises redemption implicitly. You know, like you need your country and you are hopelessly racist, and that this ideology, adherence to it, will somehow redeem you from that. And it's nonsense. It would only suck you in deeper into idolatry, well, because it's all about racial conflict, hatred, and also obsession with things to do with race. Which is, you know, Jesus taught, well, the Apostle Paul said that in Christ there is neither male nor female, Jew nor Greek, bond nor free. That in Christ we are supposed to be able to lay aside all these silly things like external appearance, race, sex, all that stuff. Ultimately in Christ, though in the world there are male and female roles, in Christ there is no male or female. You are just another child of God to Christ and in Christ. In the sight of God, every man, every woman is of equal worth in the metaphysical sense in the judgment. I mean, they each deserve the same treatment. At least, you know, though not all get the same treatment because God is merciful. If God wasn't merciful, we'd all just be destroyed. And because he is merciful, we are not. So I've hated them that regard lying vanities. I feel like that should be... I regret... I don't know if I said it as well as I could or would or want to. I just really... think I struggle with idolatry a bit. Because I want to really nail it. And I haven't nailed it yet. I mean, I used to talk about it in certain terms, and I talk about it in certain terms now, right? But like I said, there's got to be that like idolatry light that I can see that maybe is part of my own life. I don't know. You know what I mean? I want to see that. It's like, is there idolatry in me? Is there a regarding of lying vanities in me? You know what I mean? Am I putting my trust in something that isn't God to do that which God should only do for me? Meaning, God is my rock, right? He is my fortress. That, you know what I mean? Is there something set up in my heart that is a fortress in God's stead? That is a rock in the place of God? I put my trust in the place of God, where I should be trusting in the Lord. These things become like idols. As far as I know, I'm blind to anything like that actually exists in my life because I can't see anything. So if I'm struggling, that's probably why. It's like I'm trying to see things that I'm not seeing very clearly. And so we could just get here and talk about idols and Molech or Catholic statues and say, oh, those Catholics are so terrible and their images and all that. And that's fine. It doesn't help me, though. I don't have images of saints. I don't have images of Mary. I don't call her Queen of Heaven. You know? That's not my thing. And I think it's sort of empty of me to comfort myself while saying I'm not like them. You know what I mean? I'm not? Well, maybe I am like them in ways that I don't understand. You know what I mean? Maybe I got my own little idolatry, superstition thing going on that I am not spotting in my life. It happens all the time. It's part of my daily, you know what I mean? I don't know. I want to be certain, though. I will be glad and rejoice in thy mercy, for thou hast considered my trouble. Thou hast known my soul in adversities, and hast not shut me up into the hand of the enemy. Thou hast set my feet in a large room. Have mercy upon me, O Lord, for I am in trouble. Mine eye is consumed with grief, yea, my soul and my belly. For my life is spent with grief, and my years with sighing. My strength faileth because of mine iniquity, and my bones are consumed. I was reproached among all mine enemies, but especially among my neighbors, and a fear to mine acquaintance. They that did see me without fled from me. I am forgotten as a dead man out of mind. I am like a broken vessel. For I have heard the slander of many. Fear was on every side. While they took counsel together against me, they devised to take away my life. But I trusted in thee, O Lord. I said, thou art my God. So, honestly, if we could get through verse 13 today, that'd be great. But that's a lot of verses, and it's kind of... I don't like it when I spend the first 50 minutes of the study on one verse, and then spend the next 10 minutes on 8 verses. Even though they're kind of... These things are... there's a singular subject here, basically, right? The mercy of God. People trust in things other than the Lord, but I trust in the Lord. And I will be glad and rejoice in thy mercy. It's like I was saying. God is not a force, a system, a set of rules. God is a person. And therefore, there's something in him called mercy. The law is incapable of mercy. The law says right and wrong. You know what I mean? The law doesn't tell you when to have mercy. Like when you should let someone who has sinned go free without being punished as the law prescribes. The law has a prescription for certain offenses that they be punished. You know? And that's how it is for all of us. There's a prescription for what to do about certain things. Like, you're a sinner in a certain way. Well, here's the punishment. The wages of sin is death. And so I have something coming. You know? But God is merciful. Now, I get into trouble that I well rightly deserve. And God, in that time, you know, he looks at me with mercy. You know, all the troubles I've been in that God has gotten me out of, you know, I didn't deserve to be rescued from any of them. But God in his mercy considered my trouble. And he's known my, you know, thou hast known my soul in adversities. You know, I've gone through adversities and God has seen what I really am about. What are you really about? You know, sometimes you don't know much about yourself, who you really are, till you experience adversity. I was listening to somebody talk, and they were talking about, I forget who or why, was it the radio? I forget. But he was saying how in his college courses, he would talk about, okay, you know, you're in Alabama, it's 1843. How do you feel about slavery? You're a white person, you know, born in that land. You for it or against it? No, actually what he says, how many of you are abolitionists living in, you know, southern, and they all raise their hand, you know, like, oh, if you'd been born then, you just have this, your morality is totally distilled and has nothing to do with the culture you were raised in, right? I don't believe the things I do because I was born in 1973. No, I would believe them just no matter when I was born. You know how vain and stupid it is? And that's, well, it's stupid, yes. But it's such a vain thing for me to think that of myself. Like, I'm separated from the world in which I came to be. Like, oh no, my opinions are all just derived whole from the universe without regard. You know, I would have developed the exact same, I'd be teaching the Bible exactly the same if I had born in 1800, 1700, 16. I'd be the same person. I'm not. I'm not totally in control of everything. And certainly, the adversities I go through, though, show something, you know what I mean? Like, here's the thing. I don't know if I would be pro or anti-slavery if I was back in those times. You know what I mean? Like, I'd like to think I would be against it. But I know this about myself that would be true now or whatever. You know, whatever time I lived in. It's like if I knew I was wrong, you know what I mean? That is going to affect my conscience. And that I do take with me from generation to generation. Like if I know I'm wrong. You know what I mean? So I don't know what I'd be. Because here's the thing. You know, the point was like basically like you'd be raised in a certain society, there'd be all this peer pressure around you. It's like with the mask thing. I was going to do a little talk about masks again because it became such a political issue. As it should, since they made it one. It should have been a social issue of politeness and courtesy. You know, should have been about the contract, the social contract between individuals. You know what I mean? That's how it should have been sorted out. With peer pressure, appeals to patriotism and such. But instead they decided to try to coerce people. Some towns putting fines on it and stuff, which I find very objectionable. And, but going through that, like, you know, here's the thing. It's like I said, I don't think the wearing mask is a mark of the beast. I don't. But, I mean, I've heard people describe it as like a weird mark of the beast-like thing because it is, if you want to know what it feels like, if you want to get just a taste, just a tiny little... Just a little taste of what that's like. Then do as I did. Go around for weeks without a mask. Go in places. I'll tell you what, it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. It got to the point, like, I literally don't go to Walmart anymore. I won't go to Walmart anymore. If I absolutely need something I can't get anywhere else, I order it online. I literally will not go in the store anymore. And there are a lot of places like that. you know? Just because of, and it's not because, like, I could put on a mask and go in and whatever. And I mean, like I said, I'd like to talk about that specifically on another topic. I don't want to tie it up in this study because that'll make the study kind of really dated. But what I'm saying is, like, I know, like, when you feel the general feeling is against you, it's very, as a social experiment, for me, it was very instructive. All right? I'm just saying. And I'm glad I went through it. You know why? Because I showed myself I could go upstream when everyone else is going downstream. And I wasn't afraid to do so. I mean, I didn't like it. I knew I wouldn't like it. But I proved something to myself, and that I could say, like, you know what? I don't just go along with the crowd necessarily. If I have a good reason, if I know, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying you have to do anything, but, like, I'm just saying going through it showed me that I could say, you know, I am willing to do things. And I always knew this about myself, that I don't always go along with the crowd. But it's one more time I exercise myself in that. It's a good thing to exercise yourself in. I mean, sometimes you should go where the crowd is going. You know, everyone's running away from the fire. Everyone's running away from the hurricane, the tornado. Maybe you should run too. I don't know that necessarily you should run to the danger. But and certainly there is a wisdom in, like, what everyone's doing sometimes. Sometimes what everyone's doing is what you should be doing. But you shouldn't do it uncritically without thinking. You got to think, is this the right thing to do? Is this what is expected of me, of God? You know, would God want me to do? What does God want me to do in this? Ask those questions. So, I says God knows your soul in adversities. You go through adversities, sometimes it exposes more about what you really are, who you really are, than comfort. You know, the comforts and pleasures of normal life, of a wealthy Western existence, can cause us to become complacent and think ourselves, oh, we're fine, we're good, but we're actually not. You know, actually what it is like we have no resiliency. We have no fight. You know, I mean, we have no, you know, we are going to go along with the crowd no matter what. We are going to do what our superiors say no matter what. I've never heard so many people make the Nuremberg Defense. You know, the Nuremberg Defense. It was the defense that the Nazis made at the Nuremberg trials. Which is, I was being ordered. I was just following orders. They told me to gas all those Jews, so I did. It was just the orders. I was following the rules. The leaders said to do this, so we did it. It came down official and everything. There was a document that was stamped and sealed. Gas those Jews. So we did it. Couldn't be wrong because we were following orders. And you think, like, well, this was very different. Look at, if you can't, and I'm not saying, like, you know, hey, if you wear a mask, you're ready to gas the Jews. But I tell you what, the degree to which I saw people and felt that people were just doing what they were told frightens me a bit. Because now I'm not sure, you know, they asked a small thing that was kind of silly. Wear a mask all the time, you know? Now, that's not what the recommendation actually is, but they asked us to wear a mask in public. You know, and there's little caveats about, like, social distancing. It's like if you're alone in public, you don't need a mask. It's when you're close to people in public, you know, or when you're in a large group of people, it's supposed to be, you know, you're going to wear that. It's going to help. Okay, stop spreading the disease. But even if you know what I mean, like... But if you know you're in a safe situation, like if you're driving in your car and you got your mask on, that's silly. You know what I mean? You should know that's, you know what I mean? And if you're doing it because you think you're following the rules, you scare me. You know what I mean? It scares me when people throw out common sense. They're driving around in a car with their windows up and a mask on. This is an uncritical, unthinking obedience to authority. You know what I mean? That's scary. The degree to which people just bend the knee and do whatever they're told, I've learned this year, frightens me. I'm frightened of the people in my country. I'm frightened of the people in my region. They were all willingly going along with things that were very questionable. And I still, like I said, I'll talk about the mask thing more and the general topic on a special or something like that. But the times we live in have been deeply troubling. Like I said, I don't know if we're living in the end times. I'm certainly not convinced we are. I'll tell you that right off the bat. I'm not convinced we are. This is the end times. This is not. But it's certainly, we're in some times, right? These are some times, which is, and I would rather go through some times than the end times, believe me, because the end times are going to be like, this ain't nothing. You know what I mean? You feel pressure to put a mask on in public. Ooh. Like I said, Paul, you went to Walmart without a mask on. Ooh. You walked in and they looked at you, and you walked into Menards and they yelled at you. Sir! Hey! It's not fun. I don't like getting yelled at. I like to follow the rules, by the way. When I was a kid, I wasn't a big flaunter of rules. I'm actually I was well liked by my teachers for being an obedient and mindful of authority kid. I was respectful of teachers. I did what they told me. I'm not a troublemaker. But like when it says, you know my soul in adversities, I mean, adversities reveal your soul. Like, who are you really? You know what I mean? I love people. I do anything for people. And then you're on your airplane, right? And it's taxing, and it bursts into flames. And people are dying. And you step on the grandma's head to get out of the plane to save yourself. Now you know who you really are. Your soul is exposed. Who are you really? Someone who will do anything to save their own skin. I mean, oh no, I'm the one who will sacrifice themselves for others as I step on a child's face to save myself. You don't know till you go through adversities who you really are. You think you know who you are. I've been through enough difficult situations to see glimpses of myself. And it's not impossible to change, but you have to kind of know. I remember the first time I was in like a situation where it was like, the only time really, where someone was like, going to pull a gun and stuff. And I remember how I froze. I was 17 at the time, or 18, or something like that, 17 or 18. And I was 18. Yeah. I remember someone was going to go, and I was like, pistol. Terrifying. I knew that I don't like to fight. I'm good at I'm better at inaction than at action. But the freezing in that moment made me realize, okay, I gotta remember next time, don't freeze. I didn't exactly freeze. I mean, I got the heck out of there. Actually, I didn't spring into action though. Like offensively. I didn't do a sliding leg sweep and disarm the guy with the gun. I didn't do that. I didn't turn into an instantaneous hero. You know what I mean? Like you have these visions of yourself. You're heroic. You would do this. You would do that. I will fight against Satan. I will fight against Satan. And then in the normal world, a little trouble comes along and I bow to Satan. So when the hell am I going to start fighting him? You know what I mean? Why don't I fight him now while it's easy instead of when he's in power and everyone in the world is cooperating with him? I think I barely, I mean, like, if I'm not fighting Satan now, why would I expect to say, oh, I'm going to get really anti-Satan when he comes and everyone else is pro-Satan? Yeah. Because peer pressure has no effect on me. I mean, I'm not, I'm saying completely facetiously. It has a terrible effect on me. You know what I mean? Like, while I'm going around without a mask, I feel this incredible self-consciousness, and extreme negative feelings. I don't even want to go in public like that. I don't even want to be, I just want to just escape the world. That's how I feel. Like I just want to get away from all this. I don't want to be part of this. I don't want people to be looking at me like I'm strange. I don't want people to be hating on me like I'm trying to get people sick. I'll talk about that some other time. But because the reason I talk about it is because I feel like that, yeah, myself has been revealed to me in different ways in adversities. You know what I mean? How you deal with adversity says a lot about you. It's when everything's going fine, everybody's fine. It's easy to be nice when you have lots of money and prosperous and all that, it's like, and it's easy to be generous when you have plenty. It's when you have little. Are you truly, when you have not enough, are you still capable of generosity? Well, that adversity of suffering without exposes your soul. God, you know who I really am. You've seen my soul in adversities. You've known it. My troubles. Okay. We didn't do verse 8 or any other verses, so we're going to pick it up with verse 8 tomorrow. I spent the whole time on 2 verses. That's all right. Important things, because you think, I don't want to think unrealistically about myself, what I'm capable of, either positive or negative, overestimate my own value. God knows me. He sees my weakness. I mean? I want to see it too. He has known me in my weak moments. I don't want to forget myself, who I really am in the weak moments. God knows me, and therefore, it is also important for me to know me. It is. Because knowing who I am enables me to change that. Or it at least makes me aware enough to know what ought to change. You know what I mean? Until you know something's wrong, how do you know that you should change it? How do you know? Just randomly start selecting things that you think like, well, that might be worth changing? I don't think so. Anyways. So thanks for joining me this day. I look forward to being back again tomorrow to continue in the Psalms. Until then, whatever.